Hey there. Before you dive into the depths of history, hit that like button and subscribe, because trust me, you'll want to stick around for this roller coaster of bizarre facts. Ever wondered what medieval punishments made the electric chair look like a spa treatment? Or why ancient Romans were obsessed with urine as a mouthwash? Here's a teaser. Did you know that in 1325, a French king executed a group of cats? Yes, you heard that right. And why? Because he thought they were witches. Talk about a perfectly bizarre way to handle a crisis. Let's talk about the Greeks who believed in a myth where a guy named Tantalus was punished by standing in water he couldn't drink, surrounded by fruit he couldn't eat. What's worse? The fact that he was eventually joined by a whole buffet of tortured souls. And don't get me started on the medieval practice of trial by ordeal. You could be thrown into a river to see if you float, because if you do, you're a witch, and if you sink, well, you're definitely not a witch, but also probably dead. So, what's the deal with these grotesque practices and sexual curiosities from our past? Why did the Romans have public restrooms that were basically one big social gathering? And why did medieval knights think it was okay to joust while wearing a suit of armor that weighed more than a small car? Stick around as we uncover the strangest disasters and oddities through the ages, complete with specific dates that will make you question everything you thought you knew. Don't forget to turn on loop so this episode can play on repeat until you finally drift off into a history-induced sleep. ### The Unexciting History of Ancient Egyptian Linen Wrinkle Management Techniques. Linen. The fabric that graced the bodies of pharaohs and peasants alike, woven from the fibers of the flax plant, and yet, the bane of many an Egyptian's existence due to its propensity to wrinkle. It's hard to believe that the ancient Egyptians, who built pyramids that have stood the test of time, also faced the eternal struggle of wrinkled garments. Let us embark on an exhilarating journey through the less-than-thrilling annals of ancient Egyptian linen wrinkle management techniques. Grab your papyrus scrolls and prepare for a wild ride, if by wild ride, you mean a deep dive into laundry practices that might make you reconsider your own. ### The earliest records, 3100 BCE, Ancient Egypt. Let's start at the very beginning, 3100 BCE, to be exact. This is when we first catch a glimpse of linen making its debut in the wardrobe of the ancient Egyptians. While the world was busy discovering fire and inventing the wheel, the Egyptians were busy perfecting the art of linen production. Flax plants were cultivated along the fertile banks of the Nile, and the linen produced was finer than a cat's whisker, perfect for those hot desert days when even the sun needs a break. But who would have thought that managing wrinkles would become such an epic saga? Did they really have enough time between building pyramids and mummifying their rulers to worry about creases? Apparently, yes. ### The Ironing Board of the Gods, 2500 BCE, Giza. Fast forward to around 2500 BCE, where we find ourselves in Giza, home to the majestic pyramids and an equally majestic array of linen garments. It was here, under the watchful gaze of the Sphinx, that the ancient Egyptians developed some rather unique wrinkle management techniques. 1. The hot stone method. Picture this. A group of Egyptians gathers around a large flat stone heated by the sun, pressing their finest linens against it. Imagine the conversation. You think these linens will impress the pharaoh? Quick, press it against that stone. It's hotter than a summer day in Memphis. 2. The moisture technique. Why use a simple iron when you can use an entire river? Yes, they would soak the linen in water, because who doesn't want damp clothing sticking to their skin, and then lay it flat in the sun, hoping that the sun would magically smooth out those wrinkles. Spoiler alert, it didn't. Did they really think the sun had a personal vendetta against wrinkles? 3. The weight of authority. They would sometimes place heavy stones on their linens for hours, because nothing says fashionable like a garment that's been squashed by a rock. How many stones do you think it took to achieve that level of flatness? Hashtag the Pharaonic Fashion Police, 1500 BCE, Thebes. By 1500 BCE, we find ourselves in Thebes, where fashion was serious business. The pharaohs were not just rulers, they were style icons. The last thing they needed was a wrinkle ruining their royal portrait. And so, the infamous Pharaoh Hatshepsut, one of Egypt's few female pharaohs, took linen management to a whole new level. The royal iron. Rumor has it Hatshepsut had a personal iron shaped like an ankh. Imagine her saying, "I will not be caught dead in a wrinkle," as she pressed her robes with a heavy hand. Did she have a team of servants just for linen management? Probably. Scented linen. In a bizarre twist, they would sometimes sprinkle their linens with perfumes. Was this to mask the smell of sweat or to distract from the wrinkles? Perhaps both. Because nothing says, "I'm fabulous," like smelling divine while looking slightly disheveled. Hashtag absurd anecdotes and curious practices, 1000 BCE, Memphis. As we roll into 1000 BCE, the city of Memphis becomes the epicenter of linen production and wrinkle management. Here, the ancient Egyptians were so serious about their linen that they set up entire workshops dedicated to its care. The linen spa, yes, you heard that right. Workers would take linen to the spa, a euphemism for a washing station, where it was beaten, soaked, and scrubbed. Imagine a bunch of linen pieces lounging in a spa, sipping on some Nile water while getting a good massage, because that's exactly how luxurious ancient Egypt was. The Linen Olympics, and then there were the Linen Olympics, where competitors would race to see who could press their garments the fastest. On your marks, get set, iron. Just picture it, a crowd of onlookers cheering as someone frantically pressed linen under the hot sun. What a thrilling spectacle. Hashtag the wrinkle management hierarchy, 500 BCE, Alexandria. By 500 BCE, Alexandria had risen to prominence as a cultural hub, and with it came a new wave of linen care techniques. The elite had developed a veritable hierarchy of wrinkle management. 1. The servant class. The wealthiest individuals employed servants specifically for linen care. Imagine a servant's job description: must be proficient in the art of pressing, soaking, and folding linens while avoiding personal injury from heavy stones. 2. The Fashionista's Guide. The rich created manuals on how to achieve the perfect wrinkle-free look. Step 1. Ensure your linen is damp. Step 2. Lie flat on the ground and pray to the gods for divine intervention. 3. The wrinkle removal spells. Yes, spells were cast to ward off wrinkles. O mighty Ra, please smooth my linens as you smooth the sun across the sky. Because nothing screams, goddess, like a wrinkle-free gown. Hashtag the final flourish, 300 BCE, the decline of linen management. As we reach 300 BCE, the glory days of ancient Egyptian linen wrinkle management started to wane. The Romans had arrived, and with them came new fabric technologies. The Egyptians, once the masters of linen, were now forced to adapt to the new fashion trends. The rise of wool became the new darling of the ancient world, but wait. Didn't that come with its own set of wrinkles? Did the Egyptians just swap one problem for another? The reluctant shift, some Egyptians resisted change, stubbornly clinging to their beloved linen. But our ancestors wore linen, they'd argue. And yet, standing in the shadow of a Roman toga, it was hard to make a case for wrinkly garments. The final irony, in a twist of fate, the decline of interest in linen led to the rise of new wrinkle management techniques, including steaming and pressing with hot irons, concepts that the Egyptians had already explored centuries earlier. If only they had known they'd be ahead of their time. Hashtag conclusion, the legacy of linen wrinkle management. So, what have we learned from the unexciting history of ancient Egyptian linen wrinkle management techniques? Firstly, that the struggle against wrinkles is as old as civilization itself. Secondly, that the Egyptians, despite their grand achievements in architecture, art, and governance, had their own domestic challenges, which makes them all the more relatable. And finally, one must wonder, if the ancient Egyptians had the tools and techniques of today, would they have invented a wrinkle-free linen? Or would they still be battling creases with hot stones and heavy weights? In the end, perhaps the history of wrinkle management is less about the techniques themselves and more about the human spirit's relentless pursuit of perfection, even if that pursuit is hilariously flawed. So the next time you reach for your iron, think of those ancient Egyptians, who, despite their many achievements, were all too familiar with the trials of linen care. And remember, even the mightiest pharaoh had to deal with a wrinkle or two. The unexciting history of ancient Egyptian linen wrinkle management techniques. In the grand tapestry of ancient Egyptian civilization, where the pyramids towered and pharaohs reigned, one might expect tales of thrilling conquests and divine interventions. Yet buried beneath the hieroglyphs and monumental temples lies a saga far less glamorous but equally essential, the wrinkle management techniques for linen. Yes, the pristine linens that adorn both the living and the dead were of utmost importance, and the methods to keep them smooth and unwrinkled are as fascinating as they are unexciting. Hashtag construction methods and materials. Linen production, approximate, 3000 BCE. The journey of linen began with the cultivation of flax, a plant that thrived along the fertile banks of the Nile. The process from plant to fabric was labor-intensive and meticulous. 1. Flax cultivation. Flax seeds were sown in early autumn, around October, and harvested in late spring, April-May. Flax plants would grow to about 3 feet tall, producing fibers that would eventually be spun into linen. 2. Retting. After harvest, the flax was soaked in water for several days to break down the tough outer stalks, a process known as retting. Egyptians were particularly proud of their retting techniques, using the Nile's water to enhance the quality. 3. Breaking and scutching. Once ret, the flax underwent breaking, to separate the fiber from the stalk, followed by scutching, removing the remaining bits of stalk. This was often a team effort, with family members or workers spinning together, sharing gossip while they toiled. 4. Spinning. The fibers were spun into threads using drop spindles, often taking place in the evenings when the heat subsided. A skilled spinner could produce about 300 meters of linen thread a day. 5. Weaving. The threads were then woven into fabric on a loom, a rectangular structure that required significant skill. The weavers, often women, could create various types of linen, from coarse to fine, which would determine the fabric's price. Materials and costs. The cost of linen varied significantly based on its quality. Coarse linen, suitable for everyday garments and shrouds, was relatively inexpensive, while fine linen, used by the elite and for burial wrappings, could cost a small fortune. Here's a quick breakdown of materials. Flax seed, 1 deben, approximate 0.1 kilograms, cost 1/10 of a deben of silver. Labor. Skilled weavers demanded higher wages, ranging from 5 to 7 deben a month, while laborers for retting and breaking earned about 1 deben weekly. A fine linen tunic might set a commoner back 3 deben, while a pharaoh's burial shroud could cost upwards of 50 deben, a price that could make even the richest merchant sweat. ### bureaucratic rules and punishments. In a civilization as organized as ancient Egypt, linen management was not just a domestic concern, it was a matter of state policy. The bureaucracy surrounding linen production and care was complex, reflecting the importance of linen in social hierarchy and religious practices. ### regulations, approximate, 2000 BCE. 1. Quality control. Inspectors, known as neteru, were appointed to ensure that all linen produced met specific standards. Any linen deemed subpar was subject to immediate destruction. Imagine a poor weaver's horror as they watched their hard work go up in flames, merely because a bureaucrat deemed it too wrinkled. 2. Loans and taxes. Linen was also taxed, and records were meticulously kept. If a citizen failed to report their linen inventory accurately, they could face fines or worse, mandatory participation in a community linen production day, which was considered a form of punishment. 3. Wrinkle penalties. Yes, you read that right. Wrinkles were a serious offense. Citizens caught wearing wrinkled linen could be fined 1 deben, while repeat offenders faced the humiliation of public shaming, paraded through the market with their wrinkled garments on full display. Wrinkled wali became a term of derision for those who could not keep their linens in check. Hashtag roles and job descriptions. Within this intricate system, various roles emerged, each crucial to the maintenance of linen's pristine state. 1. Flax farmers, responsible for cultivating and harvesting flax. They were often skilled in agricultural practices and could identify the best seeds and growing conditions. Many flax farmers believed they were favored by the goddess Isis, a belief that kept them motivated. 2. Linen weavers, often women. These craftsmen were vital in transforming raw flax into fabric. They specialized in various weaves, with some creating elaborate patterns, while others focused on everyday garments. Their skills were passed down through generations, with weavers often boasting of their family's long history in linen production. 3. Inspectors, appointed officials who checked the quality of linen produced and enforced standards. They had the authority to impose fines and penalties, making them simultaneously respected and feared in their communities. 4. Linen merchants, traders who sold linen to the populace or exported it to neighboring regions. A successful merchant could amass considerable wealth, but they also faced fierce competition and had to be savvy in their dealings. 5. Laundry workers, responsible for washing and caring for linen. These workers used a combination of water, ash, and sometimes even plant-based detergents to keep linens pristine. They had a reputation for being the unsung heroes of linen management, often overlooked until a particularly stubborn stain threatened to ruin a fine garment. Hashtag technical specs and inventories. The technical specifications of linen were detailed and precise. The Egyptians had a keen understanding of thread count, weave types, and the properties of different flax strains. Here's a brief inventory of the types of linen produced. Coarse linen, 3 to 6 threads per centimeter, used for everyday clothing and shrouds. Cheap and durable, but wrinkled easily. Medium linen, 10 to 15 threads per centimeter, suitable for priests and nobles, often dyed in rich colors. Fine linen, 20 to 30 threads per centimeter, the choice of royalty, soft and smooth, often embroidered with gold threads. Hashtag inventories, approximate, 1500 BCE. A typical household might maintain the following linen inventory. 5 large sheets, for bedding. 10 tunics, various qualities. 2 fine ceremonial garments. 1 burial shroud, reserved for special occasions. Meanwhile, a pharaoh's inventory would be a sight to behold. 100 fine linen tunics, embroidered. 50 ceremonial kilts. 25 burial wraps, each more intricate than the last. 10 pairs of linen sandals, to avoid ruining the fabric with dirt. Hashtag final thoughts, a wrinkle in time. As we delve into the unexciting history of ancient Egyptian linen wrinkle management, it's easy to overlook the sheer importance of these techniques. In a society where appearance was paramount, the quest for wrinkle-free linen was a matter of personal pride and societal status. Like the pyramids, these meticulous processes showcase the ingenuity and dedication of ancient Egyptians. So the next time you find yourself frustrated with a wrinkled shirt, spare a thought for the ancient Egyptians who faced similar struggles, albeit with much higher stakes. After all, if the worst thing that happens to you in a day is a wrinkle, consider yourself lucky. You're not being paraded through the streets in public shame, nor do you have to face the wrath of an inspector who expects nothing less than perfection. In the end, history may be unexciting, but the tale of linen in ancient Egypt reminds us that even the most mundane aspects of life can reflect a civilization's values, beliefs, and, yes, their unwavering quest for wrinkle-free living. ### The unexciting history of ancient Egyptian linen wrinkle management techniques. When we think about the splendor of ancient Egypt, our minds often drift to pyramids, pharaohs, and hieroglyphs. Yet, beneath the opulent surface lies a rather unexciting yet essential aspect of daily life: the management of linen wrinkles. Linen was a staple fabric in ancient Egypt, serving the dual purpose of clothing the populace and acting as a canvas for intricate designs. Managing the wrinkles of this prized fabric was a humble but vital task, involving a series of construction methods, bureaucratic rules, and the roles of various professionals in a society that placed high value on appearances. ### Construction methods and materials. The linen itself was crafted from the fibers of the flax plant, which flourished along the Nile's fertile banks. Flax was cultivated through a labor-intensive process that included sowing seeds, harvesting the plants, and extracting the fibers. This was no easy task. It involved soaking the stalks, beating them to separate the fibers, and then drying them in the sun. The entire process could take several weeks, but the payoff was worth it. Linen was soft, breathable, and, as we will see, notoriously prone to wrinkles. Once harvested, the fibers were spun into threads, which were then woven into cloth using simple looms made from wood and reed. The cost of linen varied significantly based on quality. Fine linen, often used by the elite and pharaohs for burial shrouds, could cost the equivalent of several months' wages for a common worker. Imagine being a seasoned scribe, laboring over papyrus scrolls, only to find that your freshly laundered linen tunic looks like it just survived a sandstorm. Not an ideal situation. ### Bureaucratic rules and punishments. The significance of linen in ancient Egyptian society extended beyond mere aesthetics. It was interwoven with bureaucratic norms and societal expectations. The management of linen was governed by a set of strict regulations designed to maintain the quality and appearance of garments throughout the Nile Valley. By 1500 BCE, regulations dictated that only the upper class could wear the finest linens, while lower classes were relegated to coarser weaves. Failure to adhere to these rules could result in penalties, including fines or even public shaming, a fate worse than wrinkled linen. Imagine being paraded through the streets with a sign that reads, "This man dared to wear a wrinkled tunic." The horror. ### Roles and job descriptions. The wrinkle management process required a variety of specialists, each with specific roles that contributed to the overall upkeep of linen garments. Here's a breakdown of some key positions in the linen management hierarchy. 1. Linen workers. These were the unsung heroes responsible for the initial weaving of linen. Their work was labor-intensive and required skill, with workers often specializing in either spinning or weaving. Their daily output determined the availability of linen for the entire community. 2. Linen launderers. Once woven, linen needed regular washing and drying to maintain its appearance. Launderers worked in communal areas near water sources, using a combination of natural soaps made from ash and oils to clean the fabric. They were also responsible for ironing linen using heated stones or metal tools, a technique that required both skill and patience. 3. Inspectors. Bureaucratic inspectors ensured that the linen met quality standards. They would scrutinize the fabric for any imperfections, including wrinkles. If a garment was deemed unfit for wear, inspectors could impose fines on the launderers or even revoke their licenses to operate. 4. Dyers. For those who wanted to add a splash of color to their linens, skilled dyers would apply natural dyes extracted from plants and minerals. This added another layer of complexity to wrinkle management, as dyed linens often required different care techniques. 5. Tailors. Once the linen was clean and wrinkle-free, tailors would cut and sew it into garments. Their attention to detail was paramount in ensuring that the final product not only fit well but also maintained a crisp, polished appearance. ######technical specs and inventories. The technical specifications of linen garments were dictated by social norms and personal preferences. Common specifications included: weight. Linen typically ranged from 100 to 300 grams per square meter. Lighter weights were preferred for everyday wear, while heavier linens were used for ceremonial attire. Weave types. The most common weave was plain weave, but twill and satin weaves were also utilized for finer garments, each with its own wrinkle management challenges. Dimensions. Standard tunics for men were often around 1.5 meters long, while women's dresses could reach lengths of up to 2 meters. The cutting and sewing process required precision, as improper dimensions could lead to unsightly wrinkles that would be a cause for scandal. ########The ironing technique, an in-depth look. One of the more fascinating aspects of ancient linen management was the technique used to remove wrinkles. The Egyptians employed heated stones as improvised irons. Here's a step-by-step breakdown of the process. 1. Preparation. Linen was first dampened with water, as a little moisture helps the fabric respond better to heat. 2. Heating the stones. Large, flat stones were heated over an open flame until they reached a temperature that could effectively press the linen. 3. Pressing. The launderer would then carefully place the damp linen on a flat surface and use the heated stone to press down, smoothing out wrinkles. It was a delicate balance. Too much heat could scorch the fabric, while too little wouldn't remove the wrinkles. 4. Finishing touches. After pressing, the linen was hung to dry, ensuring it maintained its crisp appearance. It's almost poetic that the Egyptians, masters of monumental architecture, also had to contend with the monumental task of wrinkle management. One might say they built pyramids with precision, yet struggled to keep their tunics looking sharp. ######linen in society, a cultural lens. The role of linen extended beyond mere clothing. it was a cultural symbol. The quality of linen often reflected an individual's social status. High-ranking officials and pharaohs donned the finest linens, often adorned with elaborate embroidery that showcased their wealth and taste. In contrast, lower-class citizens made do with coarser fabrics, which were more prone to wrinkling and generally less desirable. Notably, linen was also used in mummification, serving as a sacred textile for wrapping the deceased. This practice further elevated the fabric's status, intertwining it with the spiritual beliefs of the society. The irony of using linen for both the living and the dead is not lost on modern observers, especially when one considers the lengths to which Egyptians went to ensure their linens remained wrinkle-free. ####conclusion, a legacy of linen. As we draw the curtains on this unexciting yet intriguing exploration of ancient Egyptian linen wrinkle management techniques, it is evident that even the most mundane tasks were steeped in cultural significance. Linen, with all its wrinkles and imperfections, played a crucial role in the daily lives of the Egyptians, reflecting their values, beliefs, and societal structure. The meticulous processes, the bureaucratic oversight, and the skilled professionals involved in wrinkle management reveal a complexity that belies the seemingly simple task of keeping fabric smooth. While we may chuckle at the notion of a bureaucratic inspector checking for wrinkles, it serves as a reminder that, even in the ancient world, appearances mattered, much like today. So next time you find yourself grappling with a wrinkled shirt or a stubborn pair of pants, spare a thought for the ancient Egyptians who faced similar challenges with far fewer modern conveniences. After all, one can't help but wonder if the secret to a successful life in ancient Egypt was not just building pyramids but also mastering the art of wrinkle-free linen. ###The unexciting history of ancient Egyptian linen wrinkle management techniques. When one thinks of ancient Egypt, grand pyramids, majestic pharaohs, and the mystique of mummies come to mind. Yet, buried beneath the layers of sand and history lies a topic that seldom draws attention, yet is as essential as the Nile River to the daily lives of Egyptians: linen wrinkle management. Yes, you heard that right, wrinkle management. This seemingly mundane facet of ancient life reveals a tapestry of construction methods, bureaucratic intricacies, roles within society, and the technical specifications of textiles. ###construction methods and materials. The story of linen in ancient Egypt begins around 3000 BCE, when flax cultivation became a prominent agricultural practice. Farmers grew flax plants, which were harvested and processed to create linen. The construction of linen involved several steps, each requiring specific techniques and tools. 1. Flax cultivation, 3000 BCE onwards. Soil selection. Fertile lands along the Nile were favored for flax cultivation. Harvesting. Flax was harvested in July, a time when the plant had reached maturity. Retting process. The harvested flax was soaked in water to loosen the fibers from the stalks, typically done in shallow pools or flooded fields. 2. Processing. Breaking and scutching. After retting, the flax was broken and scutched to separate the fibers from the woody parts. Spinning. The resulting fibers were spun into threads using a spindle, a technique that dates back to the earliest dynasties. 3. Weaving. Looms. Simple vertical looms were employed to weave the threads into fabric. Finishing. Once woven, the linen was bleached to achieve its characteristic whiteness, often using sunlight and natural agents like natron. The costs associated with linen production varied widely. Flax was a common crop, but the labor-intensive process of transforming it into linen made it a valuable commodity. Reports suggest that a modest piece of linen could cost a laborer several days' wages, while the finest linens reserved for the elite could cost as much as a small fortune, enough to make one wonder if it was woven with gold threads. ##### Bureaucratic rules and punishments. Linen production was not just an artisanal endeavor, it was deeply embedded within the bureaucratic frameworks of ancient Egypt. The state regulated linen production closely, particularly for textiles used in religious ceremonies and royal garments. 1. Regulations. Quality control. Inspectors known as medjay were responsible for ensuring the quality of linen, particularly for items intended for the pharaoh or temples. Substandard linen was often rejected. Taxation. Linen was subject to taxation, with producers required to pay a portion of their output to the state. 2. Punishments. Fines. Producers caught using inferior materials faced heavy fines. Public shaming. Those who consistently produced low-quality linen could be publicly humiliated, a fate worse than a wrinkle in their reputation. The draconian measures taken to maintain linen quality resulted in a culture where not even the smallest crease could be tolerated. One could say that the ancient Egyptians were the original, wrinkle-free, enthusiasts, albeit with a penchant for the dramatic. ##### Roles and job descriptions. The production and management of linen necessitated a variety of specialized roles, each with distinct responsibilities. 1. Farmers. Responsible for cultivating flax, farmers were the backbone of linen production. They worked the fields, harvested the crops, and were often engaged in seasonal labor. 2. Weavers. Skilled artisans who operated looms to create linen fabric. Weaving was often a family affair, with women typically taking on this role. 3. Inspectors. These bureaucratic figures ensured that linen met state standards. Their authority resembled that of a modern-day quality control manager but with a more severe approach to consequences. 4. Dyers. Although most linen was left white, some garments were dyed using plants and minerals. Dyers had to be meticulous, as a single mistake could lead to an entire batch being deemed unusable. 5. Salesmen, or merchants. Once the linen was produced, it was sold in bustling marketplaces. Merchants had to be savvy negotiators, as the demand for high-quality linen was ever present. The social hierarchy within the linen production sector was akin to a pyramid itself, with farmers at the base and inspectors perched at the top. One might joke that the only thing more tightly woven than linen was the societal structure surrounding its production. #### Technical specs and inventories. The technical specifications of ancient Egyptian linen were quite advanced for their time. The Egyptians developed various types of linen, each serving specific purposes. 1. Types of linen. Fine linen, known as shetep, ***, used for clothing and burial shrouds. This linen was lightweight and soft. Coarse linen, primarily used for everyday garments and household items. Bleached linen, achieved through sun exposure and natural chemicals. This was the preferred choice for high-status individuals. 2. Measurements. Linen was often measured in cubit lengths, approximately 18 inches, with most garments requiring several cubits of fabric. Inventory logs show that a single bolt of fine linen could range from 5 to 10 cubits in length, depending on the intended use. 3. Storage. Linen was stored in specialized containers, often made of wood or clay, to protect it from pests and moisture. Records indicate that linen was catalogued meticulously, with detailed inventories maintained by scribes. The precision with which linen was produced and managed could rival that of a modern-day textile factory. One wonders whether ancient Egyptians would have invented the concept of just-in-time inventory had they been privy to the modern business model. Conclusion, a wrinkle in time. In conclusion, the history of linen wrinkle management in ancient Egypt, while seemingly unexciting, unveils a rich tapestry of cultural significance, economic importance, and social structure. The meticulous methods of production, the strict bureaucratic regulations, the diverse roles within the workforce, and the technical specifications all contribute to a narrative that highlights the importance of linen in everyday life. The ancient Egyptians' obsession with wrinkle-free linen was not merely a matter of aesthetics, it was deeply woven into the fabric of their society, reflecting their values of order, beauty, and respect for the divine. As we marvel at the grand monuments of ancient Egypt, let us not forget the quiet yet profound importance of linen and the lengths to which they went to keep it wrinkle-free. After all, in a culture that revered the afterlife, there was no room for wrinkles, neither in garments nor in reputation. So, next time you reach for that wrinkle-free shirt, take a moment to appreciate the ancient Egyptians who laid the groundwork for your well-pressed lifestyle. After all, if they could manage to keep their linens pristine amidst the sands of time, surely we can handle a little laundry today. #The unexciting history of ancient Egyptian linen wrinkle management techniques. In the grand tapestry of ancient Egyptian civilization, where monumental pyramids and intricate hieroglyphics often capture the spotlight, one aspect of daily life often goes overlooked: the management of linen wrinkles. While it might not seem as thrilling as the tales of pharaohs and gods, the meticulous care of linen was, in fact, a matter of high importance. Let's unravel the details of this unexciting yet essential facet of ancient Egyptian life. Construction methods and materials. Linen, made from the fibers of the flax plant, was the fabric of choice for ancient Egyptians. The process of transforming flax into linen involved several steps. 1. Cultivation. 3000 to 2500 BCE, flax was sown in the Nile Delta, where the rich silt and flooding provided ideal growing conditions. It took about 4 months for the plants to mature. 2. Harvesting. 2500 to 2400 BCE, once the flax was ready, the plants were pulled up by hand, ensuring that the roots were removed to prevent regrowth. 3. Retting, 2500 to 2400 BCE, the harvested flax was soaked in water or left to decompose in the sun to loosen the fibers from the stalks. This step was crucial, as it was the ancient Egyptian equivalent of a spa day for flax. 4. Breaking and scutching, 2400 to 2300 BCE, the fibers were then broken apart and scutched to remove the woody parts, leaving behind the silky fibers. A bit like peeling a banana, if the banana were a plant and the peel was a wooden husk. 5. Spinning, 2300 to 2200 BCE, the fibers were spun into thread using a spindle. This was a delicate process that required skill and patience. 6. Weaving, 2200 to 2100 BCE, the final step involved weaving the threads into fabric on a loom. The quality of the linen depended on the tightness of the weave and the fineness of the fibers used. The cost of producing linen varied depending on the quality. Common linen could be produced relatively cheaply due to the abundance of flax, while fine linen, often reserved for the elite, could command prices as high as 10 deben, a unit of weight equivalent to about 90 grams. ##### Bureaucratic rules and punishments. In ancient Egypt, linen was not merely a textile, it was a symbol of status and cleanliness. The bureaucracy surrounding linen production and care was as intricate as the fabric itself. Laws and regulations dictated every aspect of linen management. 1. Quality control. Inspectors, often part of the priesthood, were assigned to ensure the linen met specific standards. Any linen that failed inspection was deemed unfit and was to be destroyed. Imagine being the unfortunate soul whose linen was deemed a wrinkled disaster. That's a bad day by anyone's standards. 2. Storage regulations. Linen had to be stored in specific ways to prevent wrinkles and spoilage. Each household was required to keep an inventory of their linen stock, including types, quantities, and conditions. A meticulous record-keeping system ensured that even the smallest piece of linen was accounted for. 3. Punishments for negligence. Failure to comply with these regulations could result in severe penalties. Commoners might face fines, while high-ranking officials could be stripped of their titles. In extreme cases, one could be sentenced to labor in the flax fields, a fate worse than a wrinkled tunic. ##### Roles and job descriptions. The management of linen involved various roles within the ancient Egyptian society. 1. Flax growers. These farmers were responsible for cultivating and harvesting flax. They held a significant role in the agricultural economy. 2. Spinners and weavers. Women predominantly filled these roles. Spinners would create threads from the fibers, while weavers would transform those threads into linen. Their skills were vital, and they often worked in communal settings, exchanging techniques and stories. 3. Inspectors. As previously mentioned, inspectors were typically drawn from the priestly class. They ensured that the linen met quality standards and that the production process adhered to regulations. A bit like the linen police, but with more robes and less actual policing. 4. Linen merchants. These individuals traded in linen, selling both common and fine varieties. They played a crucial role in the economy, often serving as intermediaries between producers and consumers. 5. Linen caretakers. These hired hands were responsible for maintaining the linen's quality. Their duties included washing, ironing, and folding linen to ensure it remained wrinkle-free. Some might say they were the unsung heroes of ancient Egyptian fashion. #######. Technical specs and inventories. Ancient Egyptians had a surprisingly sophisticated understanding of fabric care, even if it wasn't always documented in a thrilling manner. Their technical specifications for linen management included: 1. Types of linen. Common linen, coarser and less expensive, used by the lower classes. Fine linen, made from the highest quality flax fibers, often reserved for the elite. The thread count could reach up to 600 threads per inch, akin to modern high thread count sheets. 2. Washing techniques. Linen was typically washed in river water, often mixed with natron, a naturally occurring salt, to enhance cleanliness. The mixture acted as a natural detergent and was critical in removing stains and odors. 3. Ironing techniques. While they didn't have modern irons, ancient Egyptians used heavy stones to press and smooth linen. The practice was crucial for maintaining a neat appearance, especially for the upper classes, who were expected to appear impeccably dressed. 4. Storage solutions. Linen was stored in wooden chests lined with aromatic herbs to prevent moth damage and mustiness. A popular choice included cedar, which not only smelled divine but also served as a natural insect repellent. 5. Inventory logs. Households maintained detailed logs of their linen, including entries for each piece, its condition, and any repairs made. Such meticulous record-keeping reflects the value placed on linen care. ######. The legacy of linen management. The ancient Egyptians' dedication to wrinkle management can be seen as a reflection of their broader cultural values: cleanliness, order, and attention to detail. While we might chuckle at the thought of a linen inspector, it's essential to recognize that this emphasis on fabric care played a role in their social structure. From the pharaohs down to the commoners, linen was a unifying element in ancient Egyptian life. It was not merely a garment but a statement of one's status and identity. A wrinkle-free linen tunic signified respectability and adherence to societal norms, a point not lost on the watchful eyes of inspectors and peers alike. #######. Conclusion. In retrospect, the unexciting history of ancient Egyptian linen wrinkle management techniques offers a fascinating glimpse into the daily lives of a civilization that has captivated the world for millennia. While it may lack the drama of grand battles or divine encounters, the attention to detail in linen care reveals much about their values, social structures, and daily rituals. So, the next time you find yourself fussing over a wrinkle in your shirt, remember the ancient Egyptians and their relentless pursuit of wrinkle-free linen. Perhaps they would have found some humor in our modern obsession with fabric care, chuckling at the irony that in the grand scope of history, it's still just a matter of pressing on. #####. The unexciting history of ancient Egyptian linen wrinkle management techniques. Linen. That delightful fabric that whispers of ancient civilizations, sunny days, and the occasional wrinkle. While many of us might think of linen as merely a fashionable choice for summer gatherings or lazy Sunday brunches, the ancient Egyptians viewed it as a matter of life, death, and perhaps even a bit of divine intervention. Yes, you heard that right. In the grand tapestry of history, the humble art of wrinkle management in linen has woven itself into the fabric of ancient Egyptian society. So, grab your most comfortable chair and prepare for a journey through time that's anything but boring. Hashtag the regional variations over time, linen's rise and shine. Let's set the stage. It's 3000 BCE, the Nile is flowing smoothly, and our friends in ancient Egypt are busy creating a civilization that would make future generations green with envy. Linen, derived from the flax plant, becomes a staple in their wardrobe, but, oh boy, did they have their work cut out for them when it came to wrinkle management. Regional variations in linen production were as diverse as the hairstyles of pharaohs. In Lower Egypt, where the Nile Delta's rich silt worked wonders for flax cultivation, linen was often thicker and coarser, making it a bit more resilient. Meanwhile, in Upper Egypt, where the terrain was as rugged as a bad hair day, the linen was finer and softer, perfect for those who wanted to feel like they were wrapped in clouds but had to contend with the dreaded wrinkle. Throughout the centuries, the Egyptians developed regional techniques and styles to combat the inevitable wrinkles that came with their beloved fabric. Some regions favored a more casual, effortlessly wrinkled look, while others sought the pristine, smooth aesthetic that could only be achieved through rigorous ironing, pressing, and perhaps a prayer or two to the god of fabric. Hashtag laws, edicts, and taxes, the wrinkled truth. Now, you might be wondering, what do laws and taxes have to do with linen wrinkle management? Well, it turns out that even in ancient Egypt, the government had a vested interest in keeping those linens looking sharp. The pharaohs, in their infinite wisdom, issued edicts that regulated linen production, and yes, that included the management of wrinkles. These laws dictated everything from the quality of flax to the acceptable methods of wrinkle eradication. Imagine being a linen merchant in ancient Egypt, trying to navigate the bureaucratic maze of taxes and regulations on your fresh, wrinkle-free goods. If you were found guilty of selling subpar linen, perhaps too wrinkled or of inferior quality, you could face dire consequences, including a hefty fine or worse, public humiliation at the hands of a particularly judgmental priest. The papyrus ledgers of the time reveal detailed records of taxes levied on linen production, and it's almost comical to imagine scribes meticulously noting down every wrinkle and fold. Today, we tax 20 shekels for wrinkled linens. Tomorrow, we shall tax the smooth ones at twice the rate. One can almost hear the laughter echoing through the halls of bureaucracy. Hashtag logistics and supply chains, the Linen Express. As any good wrinkle warrior knows, logistics is key in the battle against creases. In ancient Egypt, the linen supply chain was a finely tuned machine, or perhaps a well-oiled chariot. The journey from flax field to fashionable pharaoh was fraught with challenges, but the Egyptians were determined to keep their linens as smooth as their hieroglyphics. Flax was harvested along the Nile, where farmers would carefully gather the crops, ensuring minimal damage to the delicate fibers. Once harvested, the flax underwent a process known as retting, which sounds much more appealing than it is. This involved soaking the flax in water, allowing it to break down, and, wait for it, creating a lovely, fragrant swamp. Once the retting was complete, it was time for the next step, the logistics of transporting the now wrinkly but hopeful flax to the weavers. This involved a complex network of boats and donkeys, with merchants navigating the Nile's twists and turns like a game of ancient Egyptian Frogger. Weavers, often women skilled in the art of linen making, would transform the flax into the fabric we know and love. They spun and wove, creating garments fit for the elite, while also producing the everyday linens for the masses. But even after the weaving, the garments were far from wrinkle-free. Enter the pressing and finishing techniques that would soon become the stuff of legend, or at least the stuff of a very niche dinner conversation. ######record keeping, the name of the game. If there's anything the ancient Egyptians loved more than building pyramids and mummifying their cats, it was record keeping. Every aspect of their society was meticulously documented, and linen wrinkle management was no exception. Scribes would keep track of everything from the quality of the flax to the specific pressing techniques used by each weaver. One of the most fascinating documents unearthed by archaeologists was a detailed ledger that tracked the linen production for a particular pharaoh's summer wardrobe. Each entry contained specifics on the type of linen, the weaver, the pressing technique, and, most importantly, the degree of wrinkle management achieved. It was like a Pinterest board for ancient fashion. Historians have found records that indicate certain pressing techniques were so revered that they were passed down through generations. For example, the pharaoh's flat ironing method became a coveted skill, reserved for only the most elite weavers. The method involved using heated stones, precise pressure, and the occasional incantation to ensure that the linen emerged wrinkle-free and ready for royal approval. ########the grotesque anecdote, a wrinkle too far. Now, before you think this entire exploration of linen wrinkle management is all sunshine and smooth fabrics, let's delve into a rather grotesque anecdote that might just curl your toes. Legend has it that one particularly ambitious pharaoh decided that wrinkles in his linen garments were an affront to his divine status. He issued a decree that all weavers must employ the hottest of pressing techniques, even if it meant using the fiery embers from the sacred altar. The weavers, fearing for their jobs and perhaps their very lives, complied with the mandate, using the glowing embers to press the linens into submission. However, in their frenzy to deliver wrinkle-free garments, one unfortunate weaver, let's call him Hatshepsut's favorite, miscalculated the heat. Instead of a crisp, smooth finish, he ended up scorching the fabric, leaving it charred and unsightly. When the pharaoh donned the linen for a grand ceremonial event, the sight of the blackened patches sent shockwaves through the crowd. Gasps echoed through the temple, and it said that the pharaoh's face turned a shade of red that would make even the most vibrant sunset blush. To save face, no pun intended, he declared it a new fashion trend, calling it the charred chic. And thus, the ancient Egyptians learned a valuable lesson: sometimes, in the pursuit of wrinkle-free perfection, we may end up with something downright grotesque. Conclusion, the legacy of linen wrinkle management. As we wrap up our exploration of the unexciting yet oddly fascinating history of ancient Egyptian linen wrinkle management techniques, it's clear that this seemingly mundane topic is anything but boring. From regional variations to laws, logistics, and record-keeping, the ancient Egyptians wove a rich tapestry of practices and stories that highlight their ingenuity and flair for the dramatic. So, the next time you find yourself grappling with a stubborn wrinkle on your favorite linen shirt, remember the ancient Egyptians who navigated the complexities of fabric, laws, and even the occasional chart disaster. They may have faced their own battles with linen, but they certainly did so with a sense of humor and a dash of style. And who knows? Perhaps their spirit lives on in all of us, as we continue the eternal quest for wrinkle-free magnificence. Title: The Unexciting History of Ancient Egyptian Linen Wrinkle Management Techniques. Ancient Egypt, land of pharaohs, pyramids, and a rather unexciting obsession with linen wrinkle management. If you've ever found yourself pondering the finer points of how our ancestors kept their fashionable linen garments crisp and smooth, prepare to be underwhelmed. While the Nile may have gifted us with papyrus and pyramids, the true legacy of ancient Egypt lies in their unwavering commitment to the flawless presentation of linen. Join me as we unearth the forgotten and rather mundane world of wrinkle management, complete with regional variations, legalities, and even the occasional grotesque anecdote. Regional variations over time. First, let's take a quick jaunt across the sun-soaked sands of ancient Egypt. Regional variations in wrinkle management techniques were as diverse as the people who inhabited the Nile Valley. In Upper Egypt, where the sun beat down mercilessly, locals preferred a technique that involved a lot of sunbathing, both for the fabric and themselves. They would lay their linen out to bake until it could practically stand up and salute. You could say they were the original proponents of the crisp and crunchy style, albeit for rather practical reasons. Meanwhile, down in Lower Egypt, where the Nile was a little more forgiving, the locals had a penchant for more sophisticated methods. They employed heavy stones to press their linens flat, which they would then drape over their shoulders as a signal of their status. If the stones were heavy enough, it was said that even the most stubborn wrinkles would yield. Unfortunately, this led to a fair number of unfortunate accidents, including several unfortunate citizens who found themselves crushed under the weight of their own fashion choices. But hey, at least they looked good, albeit in a rather grotesque manner. Laws, edicts, taxes, and ledgers. You might be wondering how something as mundane as wrinkle management could possibly involve laws and taxes. Welcome to ancient Egypt, where the bureaucratic machine churned like the Nile during flood season. The pharaohs, ever the fashionistas, issued edicts dictating the quality and presentation of linen for their subjects. "Thou shalt not flaunt thy wrinkles," they decreed, sending scribes scurrying to draft scrolls detailing the proper methods of wrinkle eradication. Taxes on linen were particularly steep, as the fabric was a symbol of status as much as it was a practical necessity. The more luxurious the linen, the more taxes one would pay. This led to a thriving black market for counterfeit linens, where unscrupulous tailors would pass off a rough-hewn imitation as the real deal. The authorities soon found themselves in a pickle. How does one enforce wrinkle-free mandates when the very fabric of society, pun intended, is riddled with deceit? Enter the ledgers. Scribes meticulously recorded every transaction, tax, and wrinkle-pressing incident with the precision of a modern accountant. Their scrolls detailed not just the types of linens being pressed but also the number of wrinkles managed daily. These ledgers became the lifeline of ancient Egyptian society, a testament to their obsession with linen presentation. In fact, a particularly ambitious scribe once recorded an entire month's worth of wrinkle management activities, including a detailed account of every pressing stone and sunbathing session. Spoiler alert, it was as dry as the desert itself. ### logistics and supply chains. The logistics of linen supply chains in ancient Egypt were nothing short of remarkable, provided you have a penchant for the mundane. Linen production was a colossal undertaking, requiring vast fields of flax, which were planted, harvested, and then processed into the beloved fabric. Farmers toiled in the fields, while weavers crafted their masterpieces, all while the pharaohs fretted over whether or not their linens were wrinkle-free. The transportation of linen from the fields to the market involved an intricate web of logistics. Donkeys were the primary mode of transport, lumbering along the Nile with loads of linen that would make modern-day delivery trucks weep with envy. But as anyone who's ever dealt with shipping knows, delays are as common as sand in your sandals. A particularly bad flood could render a shipment of high-quality linen lost to the depths of the Nile, leading to a panic among the elite who suddenly found themselves facing an existential crisis over their wardrobe options. And let's not forget the trade networks that sprung up around linen. Merchants would travel to neighboring regions, exchanging linen for goods like spices and precious stones. Picture it, a merchant with a finely pressed tunic, strutting about with a load of wrinkle-free linen, all while trying to haggle for some exotic perfume. The irony of it all is that while they were trading in luxury, they were also caught in a never-ending cycle of wrinkle management. ### record keeping with lots of specifics. If you were to peek into the dusty archives of ancient Egyptian bureaucracy, you'd find yourself awash in a sea of records. Scribes recorded everything, from the number of grains harvested to the exact number of wrinkles pressed out of a particular batch of linen. Yes, you read that right. They had specific measurements for wrinkles, described in terms of slack and smoothness. One particular scribe, known only as the Wrinkle Whisperer, became famous for his detailed accounts of linen pressings. His scrolls included a wealth of data: the average time it took to press a tunic, the number of wrinkles present before and after the pressing, and even the effectiveness of various pressing stones. It was a veritable data paradise for anyone with a penchant for fabric care. Historians today have found these records to be both fascinating and utterly dull. Why would anyone care about the wrinkle count of a linen tunic, you might ask? Well, dear reader, it turns out that this meticulous record-keeping provided crucial insights into the daily lives of ancient Egyptians. It also revealed the lengths they would go to ensure that their garments were as smooth as the face of their beloved sphinxes. One surprising, borderline grotesque anecdote. Now, for the piece de resistance, a truly grotesque anecdote that highlights the often overlooked side of wrinkle management. In a particularly ambitious effort to demonstrate the superiority of his linen, a local noble decided to host a grand banquet. He invited all the elite of Thebes, flaunting his collection of expertly pressed linens, while boasting about his wrinkle-free lifestyle. However, disaster struck when the noble's prized linen tunic became the subject of a rather unfortunate incident. In a moment of excitement, he spilled a lavish dish of roasted duck all over himself. As guests gasped, he attempted to clean up, only to discover that the grease from the duck had melded with his meticulously pressed linen. In an effort to salvage the situation, he resorted to an ancient remedy, a mixture of sand and oil, which he believed would restore the fabric to its former glory. The result? A grotesque, sand-encrusted mess that left the noble looking like a very poorly maintained statue. Guests attempted to stifle their laughter, but the sight of the noble writhing in discomfort, trying to remove the sand while simultaneously maintaining his dignity, was too much to bear. This unfortunate incident not only became a cautionary tale about the dangers of combining fine dining with wrinkle management but also a topic of gossip for generations to come. Conclusion. So there you have it, the unexciting history of ancient Egyptian linen wrinkle management techniques. While it may not be as riveting as tales of gods and pharaohs, the commitment to wrinkle-free linen was a testament to their society's values. Through regional variations, bureaucratic red tape, intricate logistics, meticulous record-keeping, and one rather grotesque anecdote, we see a culture deeply invested in the art of appearance. As you go about your day, perhaps spare a thought for the ancient Egyptians, toiling away to keep their linens pristine. After all, the next time you pull out your iron, remember that somewhere in the sands of time, a nobleman once faced a much worse fate, all in the name of wrinkle-free fashion. The unexciting history of ancient Egyptian linen wrinkle management techniques. Ancient Egypt. A land of pharaohs, pyramids, and all sorts of mystical shenanigans. But amid the grandeur of hieroglyphs and the majesty of the Nile, there lies a subject that has been tragically overlooked in the annals of history: linen wrinkle management. Yes, you heard that right. While scholars have mostly focused on the more glamorous aspects of ancient Egyptian life, like the construction of the Great Pyramid or the curious habit of burying cats, there exists a surprisingly rich tapestry, pun intended, of how they dealt with the perennial problem of wrinkled linen. Grab your linen toga, and let's take a deep dive into this riveting world of fabric care. Regional variations over time. Let's start at the beginning, or rather, the warp and weft of it all. Ancient Egyptians were the proud masters of linen production, and like any good craftsmen, they had their own regional variations over time. In Upper Egypt, where the Nile is like a cozy riverbed, you would find a heavier, coarser linen, perfect for the more rugged lifestyle of the people there. Meanwhile, the folks in Lower Egypt favored a lighter, finer linen, suitable for the sweltering heat and their more elegant social affairs. After all, nobody wants to be seen sweating like a long-tailed cat in a room full of rocking chairs. As time marched on, and by time, I mean the slow passage of centuries, these regional distinctions became not just matters of personal preference but of status. The elite draped themselves in the finest quality linen, so white it practically radiated light. The common folk. Well, let's just say their linen was more vintage than vibrant. As the linen evolved, so too did the techniques for managing those pesky wrinkles. Because let's face it, a pharaoh could have the most glorious golden sarcophagus, but if his linen was crinkled, well, that just wouldn't do. Hashtag laws, edicts, and taxes, oh my. Now, you might be wondering how wrinkle management could possibly warrant laws and taxes. But in ancient Egypt, the care of linen was a matter of state interest. That's right, folks, wrinkle-free linen was so important that it found its way into governance. The rulers were so concerned about the quality of linen that they issued edicts to regulate production standards. You think your local home association is strict? Try getting a permit in ancient Egypt for a new linen workshop. You'd have to fill out more forms than a modern-day tax return, and don't even think about cutting corners. Taxation on linen was also a thing. The state taxed the production and sale of linen, ensuring that only the finest materials were available for the elite. They even kept detailed ledgers detailing who produced what, how many yards of linen were sold, and who was caught sporting an embarrassing wrinkle at the annual linen festival, an event that was apparently as exciting as it sounds. The taxes collected from linen sales funded public works, like temples and monuments. So, every time you see a grand statue of a pharaoh, just remember that it was likely built on the backs of those poor souls who were trying to iron out their linen woes. Hashtag logistics and supply chains. Let's pivot to logistics, shall we? You're probably thinking, logistics. In ancient Egypt? How thrilling. But before you roll your eyes, consider this: the ancient Egyptians had a surprisingly sophisticated supply chain for their linen production. It wasn't just a matter of plucking flax from the Nile banks and running it through a loom. No, my friend. It was a well-oiled machine, with farmers, weavers, and merchants all playing their parts in this epic saga of fabric. First, the flax was harvested and then processed through a series of steps that would make even the most ambitious modern factory manager nod in approval. After soaking the flax in water and separating the fibers, the next step was spinning these fibers into thread, which was then woven into linen. Each step required meticulous care to avoid any wrinkles, because who wants to wear a garment that looks like it was tossed in a Nile whirlpool? Once the linen was produced, it had to be distributed. Merchants would transport it via the Nile, which was basically the ancient equivalent of Amazon Prime, albeit with more crocodiles. The merchants kept meticulous records of their shipments, noting which villages received which bolts of linen. Think of it as a very early form of inventory management, or perhaps a bizarre precursor to the supply chain analytics courses we have today. Hashtag record keeping with lots of specifics. Speaking of meticulous records, the ancient Egyptians were keen on keeping everything documented. They had more scrolls than an overzealous librarian, and their record-keeping methods were the envy of civilizations for centuries. They kept track of everything from the number of linen sheets produced to the sales figures and the aforementioned wrinkle-related incidents at festivals. Most of these records were inscribed on papyrus, which, incidentally, is not a great medium for wrinkle management tips, as any ancient Egyptian would tell you. They even had a special scribe class dedicated to logging all this information. Imagine being the guy who spent his days recording that Horus the Great managed to spill wine on his pristine linen at last night's soiree. What a thrilling occupation. You'd think that with all these records, someone would have come up with a wrinkle prevention technique to rival modern-day dry cleaning. But alas, their techniques mostly revolved around steam and pressing. They would hang their garments in the sun to allow the heat to work its magic, a method that, while effective, was not exactly foolproof. It's a wonder they didn't have a dedicated wrinkle prevention ministry, with its own bureaucratic nightmare. ###one surprising, borderline grotesque anecdote. Now, for the piece de resistance, a surprising, borderline grotesque anecdote that will have you both horrified and oddly entertained. Picture this: a high-ranking official, perhaps an ambitious vizier, is preparing for the grandest of Egyptian soirees. He's donned in the finest linen, but alas, a wrinkle has dared to mar his perfect appearance. In a panic, he summoned his staff, demanding immediate action. What followed was a series of increasingly ridiculous attempts to remove the wrinkle. First, they tried the age-old method of steam, but when that failed, they resorted to a rather shocking solution: boiling the linen in hot water. Yes, you read that correctly. In a desperate attempt to achieve wrinkle-free glory, they tossed the linen into a cauldron of boiling water. But that's not all. In a bizarre twist of fate, the vizier's prized pet cat, who was apparently also a fan of fine linen, decided to leap into the boiling pot, resulting in a chaotic scene of wrinkled linen and feline fur flying in every direction. The poor cat was left with a rather unfortunate singe, and the vizier, well, let's just say he learned that sometimes, it's best to embrace the wrinkles rather than risk a catastrophe. ###conclusion. So there you have it, the not-so-exciting history of ancient Egyptian linen wrinkle management techniques. From regional variations and government regulations to logistics and record-keeping, it's a tale that might not make the front page of history books but is certainly worth a chuckle or two. And let's not forget about that little anecdote that reminds us all that, in the end, whether we're dealing with wrinkles or the occasional rogue feline, some things never change. So next time you're wrestling with your own linens, remember the ancient Egyptians and their elaborate, if not slightly absurd, methods of wrinkle management. After all, in the grand scheme of history, a wrinkle or two is a small price to pay for a good laugh. The unexciting history of ancient Egyptian linen wrinkle management techniques. Ah, linen, the fabric that has graced the bodies of pharaohs, priests, and the occasional overzealous tourist. While you might think of it as just another textile, the ancient Egyptians bestowed upon it a divine status, rivaled only by their obsession with cats and the afterlife. But today, we're going to dive into the unexciting, yet oddly fascinating world of ancient Egyptian linen wrinkle management techniques. Buckle up, it's going to be a bumpy ride through the annals of history. Regional variations over time. First, let's set the stage. Ancient Egypt wasn't just one big desert party, it was a sprawling tapestry of regional variations. The Nile, that majestic lifeblood, created a patchwork of communities, each with its own take on linen. You had the rich cotton fields of the Delta, where linen production was practically a rite of passage. Meanwhile, in Upper Egypt, linen was more of a just-make-do situation, where the quality often resembled a particularly ambitious DIY project. In the bustling urban center of Thebes, they had linen down to a science. You could find finely woven linen draped on the shoulders of priests as they performed their daily rituals. Meanwhile, in the countryside, the local farmers were still figuring out whether to wash their linens in the Nile or just let the dust settle on them like a fine layer of seasoning. The result? A delightful array of linens that ranged from "gods wear this" to "I have a questionable relationship with laundry." Laws, edicts, taxes, ledgers. Now, let's talk bureaucracy. Because nothing says, "we care about our linens," like a series of laws, edicts, and taxes. Yes, the ancient Egyptians had a system in place to ensure that their beloved linen remained pristine and wrinkle-free. The pharaohs, who were basically the original influencers, decreed that linen was a sacred fabric. With great fabric comes great responsibility, and they were not going to let just anyone walk around looking like a hot mess. Linen was heavily taxed, because, naturally, the royal treasury needed to fund those extravagant pyramids. Edicts were issued dictating how much linen could be produced, who could produce it, and how it must be cared for. You could say that the Egyptian government was all about keeping their citizens looking sharp. In fact, there were entire ledgers dedicated to linen production. Imagine a scribe, hunched over a scroll, meticulously recording the number of linen tunics made that month. Let's see, that's 5 tunics for the high priest, 3 for the vizier, and, oh look, 1 for that guy who thinks he's too good for ironing. Logistics and supply chains. And what about logistics? You think Amazon has it tough? The ancient Egyptians had to transport linen from the fields to the cities, all while dodging sandstorms and the occasional crocodile. The logistics of linen supply chains were nothing short of miraculous. Farmers would harvest the flax, which was then soaked, dried, and spun into a fine thread, if they didn't lose it to the local wildlife first. Once the linen was produced, it had to be transported down the Nile. Picture a convoy of boats, laden with bundles of linen, making their way to the bustling markets. Each boat was manned by a crew who were not only skilled navigators but also had to endure the occasional sunburn, because SPF was not a thing back then. The linen made its way to the artisans, who would then expertly dye and weave it into the garments that would make even the gods jealous. But let's not forget about the supply chain's Achilles heel, the seasonal flooding of the Nile. A well-timed flood could mean a bountiful harvest, but too much water could wash away the precious flax fields. And if the supply chain was disrupted? Well, let's just say that the priests weren't going to be happy about wearing last season's wrinkled linen. Record keeping with lots of specifics. Speaking of the meticulous record keeping, the ancient Egyptians were the original data nerds. They kept detailed records of everything: how much linen was produced, how much was sold, and even how much was lost to the whims of the Nile. The scribe's job was not for the faint of heart. They had to navigate the labyrinthine bureaucracy and keep track of every thread. Let's take a moment to appreciate the sheer volume of papyrus scrolls dedicated to linen management. There were scrolls that detailed the average lifespan of a linen tunic. Spoiler: it was not long if you sat too close to a fire. Scrolls that catalogued the various dyes used to color the linen, a whole rainbow of hues. But good luck explaining that to a colorblind scribe. And even scrolls that laid out the acceptable wrinkle-to-freshness ratio. Yes, that was a thing. These records were not just for fun, they served as an essential tool for maintaining the quality of linen throughout the ages. Scribes would document any issues with production, like an unexpected invasion of locusts or a particularly lazy group of workers who thought wrinkle-free meant skip ironing altogether. If a batch of linen came out particularly crinkled, you could bet your last loaf of bread that it was noted in the ledger, complete with a scathing remark from the overseer. One surprising, borderline grotesque anecdote. Now, for the piece de resistance, one surprising, borderline grotesque anecdote that will make you rethink your relationship with linen. Picture this: you've just finished a long day of farming, and you head home, ready to unwind. You take off your linen tunic, only to discover that it's somehow become a veritable buffet for the local insects. Yes, in ancient Egypt, linen was not only a fashion statement, it was also a five-star dining experience for bugs. Now, the ancient Egyptians were nothing if not resourceful. Instead of tossing the linen tunic into the Nile, which, let's be honest, would have made for a rather awkward laundry day, they had a rather grotesque solution: they'd take the tunic, bugs and all, and submerge it in a concoction of fragrant oils and herbs. This not-so-pleasant bath was believed to not only rid the linen of its unwelcome guests but also imparted a delightful aroma. Can you imagine walking around smelling like a Mediterranean herb garden while simultaneously knowing that you just bathed your clothes in a bug stew? Talk about a mixed message. And if that wasn't enough, there are records of people employing a rather unsavory method of wrinkle management: the use of animal fat. Yes, you read that right, animal fat. It was believed that rubbing the fat onto the linen would help smooth out those pesky wrinkles. Just imagine the scene: a group of ancient Egyptians gathered around, discussing the merits of wrinkle-free linen while someone casually slathers their tunic in sheep fat. Ah yes, nothing like the smell of lamb to really elevate my wardrobe. Conclusion. In conclusion, the history of ancient Egyptian linen wrinkle management techniques is a tapestry woven with humor, absurdity, and a surprising amount of bureaucratic red tape. From regional variations and onerous edicts to the logistics of transporting linen down the Nile, it's a tale that reminds us just how much effort went into keeping those linens looking fresh. And let's not forget the bizarre anecdotes that remind us that even in the ancient world, the struggle for wrinkle-free living was all too real. So, the next time you find yourself cursing your wrinkled shirt, take a moment to appreciate the ancient Egyptians who paved the way for modern wrinkle management, bugs, fat, and all. After all, They had a whole civilization dedicated to looking their best, and if that meant a little bit of insect salad, then so be it. Hashtag the unexciting history of ancient Egyptian linen wrinkle management techniques. Ah, linen, the fabric of the gods. Well, more like the fabric of ancient Egyptians who were so obsessed with looking immaculate, they'd probably give today's influencers a run for their money. While you might think the history of wrinkle management techniques in ancient Egypt is as riveting as watching paint dry, I assure you it's filled with enough quirks and oddities to keep you entertained. Buckle up, because we're taking a deep dive into the unexciting history of ancient Egyptian linen wrinkle management techniques. Spoiler alert, it involves a lot of laws, taxes, and some truly bizarre anecdotes. Hashtag regional variations over time. As with all things fashion related, the ancient Egyptians were not a monolithic group. They were divided into regions, each with its own take on linen care. The Nile Delta, for instance, was the epicenter of luxury linen production, where the softest flax was cultivated. Consequently, the residents of this verdant paradise were known for their crisp, well-pressed garments that could make the gods themselves envious. In stark contrast, the desert regions were more about functionality than finesse. Imagine a farmer in Upper Egypt, wrestling with unruly linens while trying to plow his fields. His wrinkled attire was likely not a statement of high fashion but rather a testament to his hard work. So while the elite were busy perfecting the art of fabric smoothness, the working-class folks were likely thinking, wrinkles? What wrinkles? I've got a harvest to tend to. The fashion police of ancient Egypt were not exactly lenient either. Social status was often dictated by one's linen quality, so you can imagine the pressure to keep those garments looking pristine. Edicts were issued, mandating specific types of linen for different classes, ensuring that no peasant could ever dare to sport the same smoothness as a pharaoh. Talk about a fashion faux pas. Hashtag laws, edicts, taxes, ledgers. If you thought the ancient Egyptians were just lounging around in their linen, think again. They had a complex system of laws governing linen production and maintenance. For instance, a rather interesting edict from the time of Pharaoh Ramses II stated that every tailor must keep a ledger detailing the number of linens he pressed daily. This was not just an exercise in bureaucracy, it was an early attempt at quality control. The taxes on linen could make your head spin. There was a whole tax levied on the production of fine flax, and if you were caught with subpar linens, you could be penalized hard. So, it's safe to say that the ancient Egyptians had a serious case of keeping up with the Joneses, but instead of neighbors, it was all about keeping up with the pharaohs. Imagine trying to explain to your family why your linens were less than perfect. Sorry, Dad, I just didn't have enough grain to pay the flax tax this year. Hashtag logistics and supply chains. Now, let's talk logistics, because what's a wrinkle-free linen without a solid supply chain? Those ancient Egyptians were no slouches when it came to organization. They had linen production down to a science, complete with a full-on logistics operation that would make modern supply chain managers weep with envy. The process began with harvesting flax during the Nile's inundation season. Once the flax was harvested, it was soaked in water to help in the extraction of fibers. This was followed by a series of drying, retting, and beating processes that would take days, if not weeks. The logistics of getting high-quality flax from the fields to the weaver's looms required an army of laborers, all meticulously coordinated to ensure that no wrinkle was left unturned, so to speak. Once the flax was woven into linen, it had to be transported to various markets across ancient Egypt. This involved navigating the Nile's intricate river systems, relying on boats that were often overloaded with wares. Imagine the scene, a group of merchants shouting, "Watch those linens. We can't afford a wrinkle crisis," as they jostled for space on a crowded barge. And let's not forget about the role of the scribes in this whole logistics ballet. These folks were the original data analysts, meticulously recording every transaction, every pound of flax, and every wrinkle pressed. They kept the wheels of this linen empire turning, all while ensuring no one could escape the clutches of the linen tax. Those ledgers were like the ancient Egyptian version of a LinkedIn profile. If your linen game was weak, good luck getting a job at the royal court. ##### record keeping with lots of specifics. Speaking of records, the ancient Egyptians were masters of documentation. They understood the value of keeping track of their linen stock, especially when it came to meeting the demands of the elite. A typical record might include the type of linen, fine versus coarse, the weight, the date of production, and even the names of the weavers and pressers involved. It was like a Yelp review system, but instead of stars, you got a judgment on your fabric quality. One particularly interesting detail involves the use of hieroglyphics to denote linen quality. A high-quality linen was often marked with a symbol representing purity, while lower-quality cloth featured less flattering motifs. You can imagine the pressure on weavers to keep their hieroglyphic game strong. After all, nobody wants to be associated with a less-than-stellar fabric. There were also records detailing the various techniques used for wrinkle management. Some of these ancient practices involved soaking the linen in a mixture of water and alkaline substances, like natron, a naturally occurring salt, to help remove wrinkles. This led to a rather amusing situation where a tailor might have been more chemist than seamstress, combining various ingredients like a mad scientist in a quest for the ultimate wrinkle-free linen. ####one surprising, borderline grotesque anecdote. Now, for the piece de resistance, a surprising, borderline grotesque anecdote that will make you rethink your linen care routine. It seems that in their quest for the smoothest linen, some ancient Egyptians resorted to a rather peculiar practice involving, wait for it, the use of fermented urine. Yes, you read that correctly. Ancient texts reveal that urine, particularly that of the wealthy, was believed to possess magical properties when it came to fabric care. The ammonia in urine acted as a natural cleaning agent, helping to remove stubborn wrinkles and stains. So, imagine the scene in a bustling ancient Egyptian household, a wealthy matron proudly presenting her linen, saying, "Oh, darling, it's just been treated with a fresh batch of my husband's finest." To make matters even more interesting, this practice wasn't limited to just any urine. No, The ancient Egyptians had a hierarchy of sorts, where the urine of the affluent was deemed the most effective. If you were a peasant, well, good luck with your linen care. So, while we're busy with our wrinkle release sprays and steamers today, ancient Egyptians were out there, living their best lives, armed with nothing but a jug of urine and a dream of wrinkle-free linen. It's enough to make you appreciate modern fabric care just a little bit more, isn't it? #Conclusion. In conclusion, while the history of ancient Egyptian linen wrinkle management techniques may not seem thrilling on the surface, it's filled with fascinating details that reveal the complexities of an ancient civilization obsessed with appearance. From regional variations and strict regulations to astonishing logistics and a penchant for bizarre cleaning methods, the ancient Egyptians truly took their linen seriously. So the next time you find yourself battling wrinkles, spare a thought for those ancient tailors, who not only pressed linen but also forged an entire industry around keeping their society wrinkle-free. And remember, while a little wrinkle might be a sign of a laid-back attitude today, in ancient Egypt, it could have cost you your social standing, or worse, your dignity. The unexciting history of ancient Egyptian linen wrinkle management techniques. When one thinks of ancient Egypt, visions of majestic pyramids, grand pharaohs, and mystical hieroglyphics often come to mind. However, beneath the grandeur lies a mundane yet fascinating facet of everyday life: linen wrinkle management. This seemingly trivial topic is a window into the daily lives of ancient Egyptians, revealing their values, societal structure, and even the constraints of their material culture. While the subject may seem trivial, the story of how ancient Egyptians cared for their linen offers a unique glimpse into a civilization that has captivated the imagination of historians and laypersons alike. #Minor figures and petty rules. In the realm of ancient Egypt, the management of linen wrinkles did not fall solely upon the shoulders of the elite. Indeed, minor figures, such as the linen overseer, played pivotal roles in ensuring that the linen of both the wealthy and the working class was well maintained. This position was often held by individuals of lower social standing, tasked with the menial job of supervising the laundering and pressing of linen. A notable linen overseer in the Middle Kingdom, named Tiamat, is recorded in the annals of a local temple inscription around 1850 BCE. His duties included overseeing the washing and drying of linen by the banks of the Nile, where sunlight served as both a disinfectant and a natural press. The world of linen maintenance was governed by a set of petty rules that, while seemingly trivial, were taken quite seriously. For instance, it was mandated that linen garments not be worn more than 3 times without being laundered and pressed. The reasoning: the ancient Egyptians believed that the sun god Ra would frown upon any fabric that bore the stains of too many days in the sun. This belief was not just superstition but a reflection of the societal emphasis on cleanliness and order. #Case studies with dates and lists. To truly understand the intricacies of linen wrinkle management, we can delve into specific case studies that reveal the care with which ancient Egyptians approached this task. One such case occurred in Thebes around 1400 BCE, where the priests of Ammonius Ra maintained a strict regimen for their sacred vestments. Case study: the sacred vestments of Ammonius Ra, 1400 BCE. Materials used * fine linen sourced from the Nile Delta. Cleaning schedule * every 3 days, with additional cleansings before major festivals. Wrinkle management techniques *. Steam pressing * garments were hung over boiling pots of water to utilize steam for wrinkle removal. Stone weights * after washing, linen was stretched and weighted down with smooth stones to keep it flat while drying. Outcome * the priest's linen remained pristine, reflecting their devotion to their deity. Another interesting case comes from the reign of Pharaoh Tutankhamun around 1320 BCE. His tomb was filled with linen, much of which was found remarkably wrinkle-free, thanks to meticulous care practices. Case study: Tutankhamun's tomb, 1320 BCE. Materials used * high thread count linen imported from as far as Syria. Cleaning techniques *. Honey soaking * linen was soaked in a mixture of water and honey, which not only cleaned but also conditioned the fabric. Ironing with hot stones * hot stones were used to press the garments flat, a technique believed to add a touch of the sun's warmth to the fabric. Outcome * the high-quality linen was preserved remarkably well, demonstrating the effectiveness of these techniques. Comparisons to other regions. While ancient Egypt had its unique linen management techniques, it is intriguing to compare these practices with those of other ancient civilizations. For instance, in Mesopotamia, the Sumerians had a different approach to fabric care. They often utilized animal fats in their laundering, a practice that left fabrics oily and less breathable. This was in stark contrast to the Egyptian technique of using water and natural sunlight, which kept linen light and airy, an essential quality in the hot desert climate. In ancient China, silk was the fabric of choice, and wrinkle management involved a completely different set of techniques. The Chinese utilized pressing methods involving heated wooden boards, which were sometimes engraved with intricate designs to imprint onto the silk. This cultural preference for silk over linen not only influenced their wrinkle management but also dictated their social hierarchies, as silk was a luxury commodity reserved for the elite. Archaeological tidbits. Archaeological findings have provided a wealth of information about ancient Egyptian linen care. In the 1922 discovery of Tutankhamun's tomb, researchers found not only beautifully preserved linen garments but also a variety of tools used in their maintenance. Among these were wooden boards with intricate carvings, which served as makeshift ironing boards, as well as a set of smooth stones that were used for pressing. Additionally, in the ruins of ancient Akhetaten, the city built by Pharaoh Akhenaten, archaeologists uncovered remnants of a laundry facility complete with stone basins and drying racks. This facility was believed to have been used for the royal linens, as evidenced by the remnants of royal insignia found on various pieces of fabric. The presence of such a facility illustrates that even in ancient times, specialized locations for linen care were a significant part of domestic infrastructure. Rhetorical questions to hook curiosity. What can the seemingly mundane practice of wrinkle management tell us about the values and priorities of ancient Egyptians? Is it possible that the way they cared for their linens reflects a deeper cultural significance, intertwining aesthetics with spirituality. Conclusion. In conclusion, the unexciting history of ancient Egyptian linen wrinkle management reveals layers of complexity that challenge our perceptions of ancient life. The roles of minor figures like linen overseers, the adherence to petty rules, and the meticulous case studies surrounding linen care paint a picture of a society that valued cleanliness and order. By comparing these practices with those of other ancient civilizations, we gain insights into how geography, climate, and culture influenced textile care. Archaeological discoveries further enrich our understanding, highlighting the importance of linen in ancient Egyptian society, both as a practical material and a symbol of status. Thus, while the topic of linen wrinkle management may seem trivial on the surface, it serves as a testament to the intricate tapestry of daily life in ancient Egypt, a civilization where even the smallest details mattered, and where the quest for perfection extended to every fold and crease of their cherished linen garments. The unexciting history of ancient Egyptian linen wrinkle management techniques. When one thinks of ancient Egypt, images of towering pyramids, grand pharaohs, and magnificent temples often come to mind. However, nestled within this rich tapestry of history is a surprisingly mundane yet fascinating aspect: the management of linen wrinkles. While the grand narratives of kings and gods dominate history books, the minor figures who shaped the delicate art of wrinkle management deserve their share of attention. At the heart of their society lay linen, the fabric of choice for both the elite and the common folk. It was not merely a textile but a symbol of purity, sophistication, and, indeed, social status. The Egyptians were meticulous about their appearance, and a well-pressed linen garment was a testament to one's standing in society. But how did they manage the wrinkles that inevitably plagued their prized possessions? Let's delve into the lesser-known yet historically rich details of ancient Egyptian linen wrinkle management techniques. Minor figures and petty rules. To understand the cultural significance of wrinkle-free linen, we must first recognize the minor figures who played pivotal roles in the daily life of ancient Egyptians. Among these were the wrinkle inspectors, a group of lesser-known officials tasked with ensuring that the linen worn by the elite was free of creases. While they may not have wielded the power of a pharaoh, their influence was palpable. One such inspector, Nefertet, held the title of Chief of the Smooth. Appointed during the Third Intermediate Period, approximately 1070 to 664 BCE, Nefertet was responsible for enforcing a set of petty rules around linen appearance. His edicts included a fine for any citizen caught wearing wrinkled linen in public, which could range from a simple loaf of bread to a full sheaf of barley, depending on the severity of the offense. Moreover, the priestly code of cleanliness, a set of regulations drawn up during the reign of Akhenaten, around 1350 BCE, mandated that all priests wear perfectly pressed linen robes during temple rituals. Infractions could result in rites being deemed invalid, thus placing significant pressure on individuals responsible for maintaining the pristine appearance of their linen. Case studies with dates and lists. Several case studies illuminate the methods employed for wrinkle management. Case Study 1, The Linen of Tutankhamun, circa 1323 BCE. The famous tomb of Tutankhamun revealed a treasure trove of linen garments, many of which were astonishingly well preserved. Among these was a particularly notable linen tunic, which was found to have been meticulously folded and stored in a way that minimized wrinkles. Experts have speculated that the ancient Egyptians used a combination of weights and moisture to keep their garments smooth. Case Study 2, The Great Linen Decree, circa 1450 BCE. During the reign of Hatshepsut, a decree mandated the production of high-quality linen, which included specific instructions for the processing and laundering of the fabric. This decree noted that linen should be soaked in a mixture of water and natron, a naturally occurring salt used extensively in ancient Egypt for cleaning and preserving. List of techniques mentioned in ancient texts *. 1. Soaking in natron-infused water, used to soften the fibers and reduce creasing. 2. Weighting cloth. Heavy stones were sometimes placed on freshly washed linen to stretch it out. 3. Ironing with heated stones. Early forms of flat irons were made from heated stones or metal plates. 4. Sun drying. Linen was often dried in the sun, which helped to set the fabric and reduce wrinkles. ### comparisons to other regions. Interestingly, the methods of managing linen wrinkles in ancient Egypt were not entirely unique. In the Indus Valley Civilization, circa 3300 to 1300 BCE, inhabitants employed similar techniques for their cotton and wool textiles. They utilized heated stones to smooth out their fabrics, and there is evidence of early forms of pressing using heavy wooden boards. In contrast, during the Han Dynasty of China, 206 BCE, 220 CE, silk was the fabric of choice, and while wrinkle management was also a concern, the Chinese approach leaned more heavily on the use of steam. The Chinese crafted elaborate steam rooms where silk garments were hung to release wrinkles, a method that would not be seen in Egypt. One must wonder, how did such different cultures develop similar yet distinct techniques for managing wrinkles in their textiles? And did the ancient Egyptians ever envy the lush silk of their eastern neighbors? ### Archaeological tidbits. Archaeological findings have revealed not only garments but also tools employed for linen care. Fragments of smooth stones, likely used for pressing, have been unearthed in several sites across Egypt. One notable discovery at the site of Amarna, the city founded by Akhenaten, included a set of small, flat stones arranged in a manner suggesting they were part of a linen care station. Moreover, remnants of linen laundry facilities have been discovered near the Nile, where water was abundant. These facilities included large basins for soaking and washing linen, along with drying racks made from papyrus stalks that allowed for airflow and sunlight exposure, essential for effective wrinkle management. ### The cultural importance of wrinkle management. To the ancient Egyptians, the appearance and maintenance of linen were steeped in cultural significance. They believed that the way one presented oneself could influence their afterlife journey. Wrinkles were not merely an aesthetic issue but a potential sign of neglect, which could lead to unfavorable judgments in the afterlife. The concept of Ma'at, representing truth and order, extended to personal grooming and presentation. A wrinkled garment could invoke chaos, a stark contrast to the ideals of balance and harmony that permeated ancient Egyptian society. So, one must ask, did the pursuit of a perfectly pressed linen represent a deeper desire for order in a world filled with uncertainty? And how did the quest for wrinkle-free garments reflect the broader human experience across time and cultures? ###Conclusion. While the grand narratives of pharaohs and monumental architecture often steal the spotlight, the seemingly mundane world of linen wrinkle management offers a unique perspective into the daily lives of the ancient Egyptians. Through their innovative techniques, minor figures, and cultural beliefs, they enacted a form of artistry that transcended the mere act of dressing. The meticulous care for linen not only reflected social status but also embodied their values and aspirations. As we peel back the layers of history, we find that even the most unexciting details can reveal profound insights into the human experience. The management of linen wrinkles may not have been the most glamorous aspect of ancient Egyptian life, but it certainly was a testament to their dedication to beauty, order, and the nuances of daily existence. As we navigate our own world of fabrics and fashion, we might just find a connection to these ancient practices, reminding us that the pursuit of perfection, whether in linen or life, is a timeless endeavor. #The unexciting history of ancient Egyptian linen wrinkle management techniques. When one thinks of ancient Egypt, grand pyramids, majestic pharaohs, and enigmatic hieroglyphs often come to mind. However, nestled within this rich tapestry of history lies a lesser-known but equally fascinating aspect: the art and science of linen wrinkle management. While this topic may seem mundane compared to the grandeur of Egyptian civilization, it is steeped in the subtleties of everyday life and the intricate social fabric of ancient society. Minor figures and petty rules. In the realm of ancient Egyptian linen management, even the most minor figures played a role. For instance, the Kthf, a lesser-known title within the linen industry, referred to individuals responsible for overseeing the quality of linen produced for the elite. They were not merely overseers but were often tasked with ensuring that the linen was free from wrinkles, which were seen as a sign of neglect. Imagine the anxiety of a Kthf as they inspected the garments worn by nobles and pharaohs, knowing that any wrinkle could lead to scorn or ridicule. Moreover, there existed a plethora of petty rules governing the care of linen. For example, it was customary for the wealthy to employ natron, a naturally occurring sodium bicarbonate, not only for its preservative qualities but also for its wrinkle-reducing effects. The use of natron was so widespread that by 1500 BCE, a decree was issued prohibiting the sale of linen that had not been treated with this essential mineral. This decree illustrated a societal obsession with wrinkle-free garments. After all, who wants to appear disheveled in a culture that prized order and symmetry? Case studies with dates and lists. To appreciate the historical context of linen wrinkle management, one must examine specific case studies that highlight the practices of ancient Egyptians through the ages. 1. The linen affair of 1710 BCE. In the tomb of a minor official named Haptet, archaeologists uncovered a series of scrolls that detailed the meticulous process of preparing linen for burial. The scrolls contained a list of the steps taken to ensure the linen remained wrinkle-free. Soak in a blend of water and natron for at least 3 days. Dry under the sun, followed by a gentle beating with a smooth stone to flatten the fabric. Iron using a heated metal plate, a technique that was both labor-intensive and indicative of the value placed on appearance. This case study reveals that even in the afterlife, the Egyptians were deeply concerned with the presentation of linen, as they believed that a smooth appearance could influence one's journey in the afterlife. 2. The Great Linen Scandal of 1250 BCE. An infamous incident recorded in the Papyrus of Heliopolis involved a scandal where a pharaoh's linen robe was found to be heavily wrinkled during an important ceremonial occasion. The pharaoh in question, Ramesses II, was furious, leading to the immediate exile of the head linen manager, Tahotep, who was blamed for the oversight. Historical records indicate that this incident resulted in the establishment of a new guild of linen caretakers, known as the Sons of Smoothness, who were tasked with enforcing stricter standards for wrinkle management. 3. The wrinkle-free revolution of 1300 BCE. The advent of the iron smelting technique during this period led to the creation of more effective ironing tools. Artisans began crafting specialized irons that could be heated over a fire or in hot sand, allowing for a more efficient wrinkle removal process. This era saw a surge in the popularity of linen garments among the middle class, who aspired to emulate the elite's meticulously pressed linens, showcasing the democratization of wrinkle management techniques. ##### comparisons to other regions. While ancient Egypt developed its own unique methods for managing linen wrinkles, other regions also had their approaches. In Mesopotamia, for instance, the use of flax was prevalent, and while they had techniques for smoothing out wrinkles, they did not employ natron as extensively as the Egyptians. Instead, they used oils and fats to condition their linen, which resulted in a softer texture but did little to combat wrinkles. The Greeks, on the other hand, admired the Egyptian techniques and often imported linen from Egypt, but they were more focused on fashion than function. Their garments were typically looser and draped in a way that made wrinkles less noticeable. This cultural difference highlights how regional attitudes towards linen care varied significantly, with the Egyptians maintaining a more rigorous approach. ####archaeological tidbits. Archaeological discoveries have provided invaluable insights into the linen wrinkle management techniques of ancient Egypt. In the 1920s, the tomb of Tutankhamun was unearthed, revealing not only a wealth of gold artifacts but also a variety of linen garments, many of which were remarkably well preserved. Researchers noted that these garments displayed intricate patterns created by the careful folding and pressing of the linen, suggesting that the ancient Egyptians had a developed sense of aesthetics when it came to wrinkle management. Furthermore, in 2012, a textile fragment was found in a burial site near Saqqara that dated back to 2200 BCE. This fragment exhibited evidence of a unique pressing technique that involved layering hot stones over folded linen to achieve a smooth finish. Such finds underscore the sophistication of ancient Egyptian linen management techniques, which were not merely about functionality but also reflected the broader cultural values of beauty and order. ####rhetorical questions to hook curiosity. Could it be that the seemingly trivial pursuit of wrinkle management played a pivotal role in shaping the very fabric of ancient Egyptian society? What secrets lie within the folds of linen that reveal the complexities of a civilization obsessed with perfection? Conclusion. The history of ancient Egyptian linen wrinkle management, while unexciting on the surface, is a rich narrative interwoven with minor figures, significant events, and profound societal norms. It reflects a civilization that understood the importance of appearance and presentation, even in the most mundane aspects of life. Through case studies, comparisons, and archaeological discoveries, we uncover a world where linen was not merely a fabric but a symbol of status, care, and cultural identity. In the end, the pursuit of wrinkle-free linen was not just a superficial concern, it underscored a deeper desire for order and beauty in a world that valued aesthetics as much as it did functionality. So, as we ponder the unexciting history of linen wrinkle management, we may find ourselves contemplating the broader implications of appearance and its significance across time and cultures. The unexciting history of ancient Egyptian linen wrinkle management techniques. When one thinks of ancient Egypt, sweeping visions of pyramids, pharaohs, and elaborate tomb paintings often come to mind. Yet, lurking in the background of this illustrious civilization is a peculiar yet deeply unremarkable aspect of daily life: the management of linen wrinkles. This seemingly mundane topic reveals a trove of minor figures, petty rules, and the occasional case study that paints a broader picture of ancient Egyptian society. Minor figures and petty rules. In the grand tapestry of Egyptian civilization, the care of linen, an essential fabric in a society where social status was often signified by one's attire, was overseen by a cadre of minor figures. Among them were the wrinkle wardens, low-ranking officials tasked with ensuring that the linen of the elite remained pristine. Their duties were not merely ceremonial, they had to enforce a variety of petty rules regarding the presentation of linen. One such rule stated that linen must be ironed only with a copper implement, as gold or silver were deemed too opulent for such trivial tasks. This rule illustrates the Egyptians' penchant for hierarchy and class distinction, even in something as banal as linen care. In their eyes, the method of wrinkle management was a reflection of one's social standing, and any deviation from the prescribed norms could lead to public embarrassment. In one notable anecdote from around 1500 BCE, a wrinkle warden named Neferhotep was reprimanded by a local noble for allowing a servant's linen to appear crumpled during a feast. The noble, whose name has been lost to history, declared that a wrinkle is the mark of a slave, thus intensifying the cultural pressure to maintain immaculate linen. Neferhotep, in a futile attempt to defend his reputation, claimed that the wrinkles were merely a sign of the fabric's journey from loom to body, but his defense fell on deaf ears. Case studies with dates and lists. The history of wrinkle management techniques in ancient Egypt can be further illustrated through a series of case studies. 1. The linen of Amenhotep II, circa 1427 to 1400 BCE, this pharaoh was known for his obsession with wrinkle-free linen. He commissioned a series of workshops where skilled laborers were trained in the art of ironing using heated stones. His court records indicate that each linen garment underwent a rigorous three-step process: washing, stone ironing, and final inspection. These workshops became a social hub, leading to the establishment of a linen guild that included weavers, washers, and ironers. 2. The fiasco of the wrinkled robe, circa 1300 BCE, a case involving a local priest, Passeer, who was scheduled to perform a crucial religious ceremony. On the eve of the event, his ceremonial robe was discovered to be seriously wrinkled, leading to a minor scandal. Passeer was forced to borrow a robe from his neighbor, who had a reputation for meticulous linen care. The priest's embarrassment became a cautionary tale, leading to the establishment of a new rule mandating that all priests must possess at least 3 wrinkle-free robes at all times. 3. The linen regulations of the Middle Kingdom, circa 2040 to 1782 BCE. During this period, a series of decrees were issued regarding the acceptable methods for managing wrinkles in linen. A list of approved techniques was codified, including the use of olive oil to condition the fabric and prevent it from creasing. Additionally, a set of penalties for non-compliance was introduced, which included fines and, in extreme cases, public shaming. Each of these case studies highlights how seriously the ancient Egyptians took their linen. While it may seem trivial to modern observers, the societal implications of wrinkle management were profound. ##### comparisons to other regions. While ancient Egyptian wrinkle management techniques were meticulous, they were not entirely unique. Across the Mediterranean, other cultures exhibited their own approaches to linen care. In Mesopotamia, for example, linen was also a sign of status, but the focus was more on the dyeing of fabric rather than wrinkle management. The Mesopotamians valued vibrant colors and intricate patterns, with less emphasis placed on the smoothness of the fabric. Meanwhile, in ancient Greece, the practice of using heated metal implements to smooth linen was adopted, but often with a twist. Greek citizens favored a casual aesthetic, so while their linen garments were ironed, the emphasis was on achieving a relaxed look rather than an immaculately smooth surface. The Greeks also introduced the concept of layering linen garments, which created a more forgiving approach to wrinkles. In contrast, the Romans, who inherited many practices from both the Egyptians and Greeks, took a more pragmatic approach. They developed a variety of fabric blends, including wool and linen, which naturally resisted wrinkling. Roman citizens wore togas and tunics that were often less prone to wrinkling due to the mixed fabric, showing a shift from the singular focus on linen that characterized Egyptian society. ##### Archaeological tidbits. Archaeological discoveries have further illuminated the importance of linen and the means of its upkeep in ancient Egyptian society. In 1922, the tomb of Tutankhamun was unearthed, revealing a treasure trove of linen garments. Among these was a stunning ceremonial robe, meticulously crafted and preserved, which bore the faintest signs of wrinkling. Analysis of the linen indicated that it had been treated with a combination of oils and employed a double lining technique, suggesting an early understanding of wrinkle resistance. Excavations of ancient laundry facilities along the Nile have unveiled tools that were likely used for ironing. Copper flat irons, remarkably similar to modern designs, have been recovered, along with remnants of olive oil jars used to condition the linen. These finds underscore the complex social customs associated with linen care and the lengths to which ancient Egyptians went to maintain their societal image. Interestingly, a collection of hieratic texts from the 18th dynasty includes a humorous anecdote about a laundry worker who misjudged the temperature of his iron, resulting in a comical incident where a nobleman's robe was singed. This story circulated among the populace, reflecting not just on the importance of wrinkle removal but on the human errors that could accompany such a seemingly straightforward task. ##### Rhetorical questions to hook curiosity. What can the ancient Egyptians' obsession with wrinkle-free linen teach us about their values, and how does this seemingly mundane aspect of their lives reflect their broader societal norms? In a world where appearance often dictated status, could the management of linen wrinkles be a reflection of deeper anxieties about class and perception in a civilization that prided itself on order and aesthetics? ##### Conclusion. In wrapping up this exploration of ancient Egyptian linen wrinkle management, it becomes clear that beneath the surface of this unexciting history lies a wealth of cultural significance. The ancient Egyptians exhibited a detailed understanding of linen care that extended beyond mere aesthetics to encompass social status, cultural practices, and even humor. While the topic may seem trivial in the grand narrative of history, the meticulous care of linen provides a lens through which we can view the complexities of a society that revered both beauty and order. As we ponder the efforts taken by the ancient Egyptians to combat the tyranny of wrinkles, we are reminded that, in every wrinkle lies a story that may seem mundane, but is intricately woven into the fabric of history itself. And there you have it. We've unraveled the mysteries of the universe faster than you can say, quantum physics. Who knew black holes could be so captivating? Here's a fun twist. Did you know that there are more stars in the universe than grains of sand on all the Earth's beaches combined? Mind-blowing, right? If you enjoyed our cosmic journey, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe for more mind-bending content, and drop a comment below sharing your favorite space fact. Curious for more? Check out our related episodes where we dive even deeper into the wonders of the cosmos. And remember, turn on loop so this episode plays on repeat until you drift off to sleep. Sweet dreams of galaxies await.